I'm recording.
You're recording. Excellent. So yeah, I think the light looks good on both of us, right? Nice.
What is this show called?
First Talk Podcast. Pretty nice name, right?
Yeah.
Simple, direct,
It's not our first time talking, though.
well, I don't know if I told you, but I found First Talk Podcast on everything available.
What does that mean?
Like I found the First Talk Podcast at Gmail was available. YouTube name First Talk Podcast was available. Instagram First Talk Podcast was available. Everything.
Missed opportunity for someone else.
I'm saying, like, First Talk seems like such a basic, like, vague enough name where you would think, oh, the domain name First Talk Podcast was available. So I was like, what the? So I took that as a sign that it was like, we're ready. This is First Talk Podcast, and I was surprised that everything was available. So yeah, I think that if I spent maybe like $10 setting everything up, that was the most. I think it was like $12 for the domain, and everything else was free.
Wait, has the podcast started?
Yeah, it literally started.
Oh, great.
So
Oh, great.
So I brought you on here because I wanted to talk to you more about the things that you're doing. I love what you're doing. First of all, I love your shirt.
Thank you.
Because I think
I'm growing peppers right now. It's the season.
I love it. And you grow a lot of peppers with Fleet Farming. Tell me some of the peppers that you grow.
So ahi chinchi, amarillo, shishito. I'm trying bell peppers this season. We also have sweet banana peppers. Trying to get away from the hot peppers because it scares people too much. But
How so? Because it's how spicy they might be?
yeah, I feel like when we're at market, people look at the peppers and automatically assume that they're spicy.
Right.
So maybe giving them some more of the like classic peppers that they know and can recognize are like sweet peppers.
Yeah.
So
What got you into nonprofits and fleet farming and gardening in general? Like, what made you decide that was what your passion was and you wanted to do it?
yeah, so funny story. I was like a freshman at UCF or maybe a sophomore, probably. I was just starting at UCF, and I had made this club at school that was like trying to put green roofing on the buildings at UCF because it's habitat restoration, it's growing plants where there's concrete or where concrete would have been instead. And moral of the story, UCF hates green roofing. They actually had some that they had removed in recent years, and yeah, so I connected. Well, actually, my colleague Kristen Anderson reached out to me, and she was just kind of like, "Hey, what is this club?" And we had a meeting, and she was working with Ideas for Us, which is the nonprofit I currently work for, and we were just kind of like seeing where we align pretty much, and so I kind of just, once they kind of killed my dream of like wanting to put green roofs on on UCF, I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna be an intern with Ideas. They had like a branch at UCF like as a club, and that's where Ideas for Us started. Was a club. It was a nonprofit, but it was also a club on campus. And so I joined that, and I had, bye Bruce.
Bye.
So I became an intern, and I really liked the eco action that Ideas made pretty publicly accessible, free. All you got to do is volunteer. So we would build oyster reefs. We would do shoreline plantings on lakes, and even in near the beach and coastal areas, we would do shoreline restoration as well. And so I interned for about 3 years with ideas. And I went on to kind of pursue my own nursery with my friend. This was during like the COVID thing, so I stopped interning with ideas, but then when COVID ended and we were, kind of getting back into the swing of things as a society, I saw the fleet farming manager position pop up on my Instagram, funny enough, and I applied for it. My boss really liked how I was storytelling on some of the like Instagram reels that I was making, and obviously I had experience with them, so not as much like farming experience. I knew how to grow things, so I had that skill going for myself, but since Florida, the growing season is September through May. So it's longer than anywhere in the country pretty much. So learning and kind of adapting to that was definitely a process, and I had to organize myself a lot, but that's how I got into ideas for us in the nonprofit sector. So yeah, go start an internship.
Yeah.
And I run my own group of interns for fleet farming now too. A lot of them are college students that are usually majoring in sustainability of some sort. And yeah, first of all, summer here is kind of like winter up north in terms of it being so unbearable to go outside. In this case, it's heat.
Yeah.
And humidity. But up north, it's the cold that prevents people from going outside and the cold that prevents people from growing. That does go to say you still can grow in the summer, but a lot of farmers here, it's optional for them. So they'll cover crop and, do what they can in the summer and give themselves a break, which I probably should give a shot this summer, because I kind of have worked through the past 2 summers and just kind of kept things going as best as I can. But
maybe giving it a little break might be good for the soil and the environment.
And myself.
And yourself. And
my own health. Are things that are kind of used to being in more extreme temperatures. So watermelon, Asian long beans, aka snake beans, peppers, eggplant, stuff like that. Your leaf lettuces and whatnot are definitely off the table. Those are like cold loving plants.
Right.
But yeah, so other than that, from September through May, there are like micro seasonal differences. Like at the beginning of September, you can start growing cucumber and green beans, but when you get to January, your green beans and your cucumbers are going to be gone. But then February starts and it's time to do it all over again. So there's like a lot of different specific seasonal changes in Florida, but the classic Victorian garden style vegetables, you can grow those typically through September to May.
That's interesting, because most people think Florida, they think beautiful, sunny weather, perfect for probably growing anything. But the reality is that there is extremes in temperature,
Yes.
probably the floodings, probably the pests. How do you guys deal with
the pests are a big one.
How do you guys deal with that?
So, and just to go off of what you said really quick, I have people who want to grow tomatoes in the summer or broccoli in the summer, and I'm just like, or they do, and then it dies, and they get discouraged from gardening, and it's just like, no, like you just need to understand seasonal growing and like how that works. What was your question again?
The extreme weathers, people think it's beautiful all the time, and then pests.
So pests are probably one of the biggest things here in Florida. I like to refer to Florida as like the Australia of the United States, because we have like, crazy big roaches, and we have
all the insects.
Literally all of them. So how I, handle pest problems on our farms is mostly through a natural, you want the predatory insects to come and eat the bad bugs.
Mm.
So like working smarter, not harder, have something in the ecosystem that already is like, you know, trying to survive. Why don't we let them do the work for them? And I remember you mentioned releasing ladybugs on crops. So that's a possibility. I personally prefer green lacewings. They kind of eat more than ladybugs, and you know, ladybugs are definitely really beneficial on the farms, but I feel like the key to having them is planting enough foliage. So, like having a bunch of leaves for them to hide in, or you know, having a section off of the side of your farm that has more foliage, native plants, etc. And so, yeah, I like to go on a naturalistic approach. If I do have to spray, it's never with anything synthetic. It's always like organic. I've used neem oil in the past. I don't really like it. Personally, right now, I'm kind of in a peppermint castile soap mixed with BT, which is both organic. And yeah, so that's how I take care of the pests on our farms.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, and so have you farmed anywhere else besides Florida? Like,
No, I'm a Floridian through and through. Yeah, I was born in Pennsylvania, so there's that. And I'm actually gonna help my sister in the spring start her garden from fresh because it's too cold to garden there right now. So that'll probably be my first time like growing things in another state. But I have helped my friends' parents grow, like say in Michigan. I've helped them grow
like just
successful
counsel
harvest.
them?
It's the same. It's just same thing as here. You got to understand the seasons.
Right.
And people from up north, when they move down here, they think like, oh, it's spring. It's time to get started. Whereas actually, no. You should have gotten started in September, and you still can like start in spring here. But you're definitely going to want to plant more of your heat-tolerant vegetables like peppers, eggplant, long beans, green beans, cucumbers, stuff like that.
So the nonprofit you work for, they help you grow that, or because I think you mentioned that I think is it flea farming that goes and like asks for neighbors to kind of donate the front yard. Is that how you guys mostly do it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that program and like how you guys actually got neighbors to get involved in that?
So I've been working here as in this position since October 2021. The Fleet Farming Program, which is a nonprofit program underneath Ideas, like Ideas is the parent nonprofit. It's a little confusing, especially because I feel like Fleet Farming is a little bit more recognized as a brand. But they started in 2014 April, so we're about to be on our 10-year of growing food, not lawns.
Nice.
And as far as, you know, some of the relationships between like, oh, how did you get those farms? They might think it's sterile because it is. There's like no wildlife that grass supports. So fleet farming is really like encouraging people to take this unused space that usually takes a lot of water, fertilizer, pesticides to even like upkeep a lawn, but and why not like use all those resources, obviously different resources, but use those resources to grow food for yourself. Like right now in my own garden, I'm growing enough kale that we don't have to go to the grocery store and buy kale anymore.
That's amazing. I think that that's like the most ideal scenario, right? Is that you can take your yard and turn it into a space for you to grow food that you can consume. I mean, if that doesn't sound ideal, I don't know what sounds ideal. Because I know some people are like, oh, well, I like my grass to look just like this, you know? And it's like, okay, but did you know that you can actually bury, or what is it? Like grow food on it.
And you can cultivate that soil to be rich. Florida has a lot of sandy soil.
Right, and anytime that you put something in there, you'll know it'll grow if you, treat it properly and maintain it. And then you can just like learn as you grow, and then
Well, yes.
yeah. And so as you go, you grow, and as you grow, you learn, and the cycle keeps going, and then you try different things, and now you're experimenting in the kitchen with new vegetables,
Exactly.
different, changing up your diet. Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and I think that that's something that gets lost a lot of times. Is like, listen,
For
you're
sure.
paying how much at the grocery store? How much is
On
inflation?
top of lawn care.
On top of lawn care, right? And then not to mention that you don't know where your vegetables are coming from.
Or you do, and you know how like toxic it
right,
actually
or
is.
they are, right? And with the fertilizers and everything. And then you're spending all this money, and then a price of an onion can go from 50 cents one year to $1 the next, and then $1.50, and then it comes back down to $1.25, and it goes up and down. It's like, wait a minute.
It'll just keep going up.
Right, it'll just keep going up. So why are we okay with that?
Well, I will mention a barrier for people to go out and do this is their 9 to 5.
Oh,
And
interesting.
their job that they already like have this occupation, so they're like, oh, I don't really have the time, or like I don't, so
Yeah.
that's where when we offer this service in Audubon Park, people are like, can I be a part of your program? And like
Right.
it's great, but we are volunteer run, and there's only so much lawn to farm conversions we can do,
Right.
like, and maintain it, because we maintain these farm spaces ourselves. It doesn't really involve the homeowners, besides we're using their land. And they of course can use that produce
Right.
if they wanted to. Some of
Sure.
them don't, and they're just like, sell it
Take
at
it
market,
all.
Yeah. But
Have you guys thought about maybe doing something where you once a week or once a month involve the neighbors, where you guys say, hey, would you guys be interested in once a month coming and helping out?
yeah, and some of them are like,
them
it
are
just
helping.
depends on who like the
Like you
homeowner
said, the
is.
9 to 5 probably affects that situation too.
Yeah, and I get that. I'm a full-time farmer and a part-time student, but maybe don't sit around and watch TV and
Right.
just go out into the garden and try to cultivate something new.
Yes.
Change your habits, and then maybe you'll have more time for it.
Yes.
That's what I would say.
I would say that too. Okay, so that brought a bunch of ideas into my mind. So yeah, so people are, working a 9 to 5, but I used to work a 9 to 5, and I used to work with this gentleman, older gentleman. I used to work with this older gentleman. He was of Indian heritage, from Guyana, and he would work from 6 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. He would go home, he would take a nap, take a shower, whatever, wake up, and then when the sun was coming down, like 5:30, 6-ish, he would go out into his garden. And he told me that because he said that he would do it sometimes during the day, but it was too hot.
Yeah.
And he would have to wear a lot of clothing, and he would be sweating and all this stuff. And so he started either doing it in the morning, but then he started working in the mornings, and now then he did it during sunset. And he said it was awesome because he worked for like 1-2 hours just picking weeds, tending to the insect, pests, this, that, the other thing. And then he said he would fall asleep, and it would be the best sleep he ever had.
Yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, that usually in summer, you have to garden from if you want to garden, it has to be towards the end of the day. The last 2 hours of the day,
Yeah.
sunset is great. But honestly, I like to night garden in summer. So I'll strap a flashlight, headlamp, and just kind of go out until the mosquitoes tell me I can't be out there anymore.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely, when it gets really hot like that, those are the ideal times to be out in the garden.
Right. So tell me about the abstracts of gardening, right? Like he told me that he always told me, if you want to live, and this was an older gentleman, he was probably like in his 70s or close to his 70s, and he told me that because he was just such a hard worker, and then he would also tell me about his gardening lifestyle, and he told me that if you want to live a long life, you're gonna garden. You'll be on your hands and knees.
Glad
gardening.
to hear it.
Yeah, that's what he said, and I believe him because this was a healthy, guy who was old, but man, he looked great.
Yeah.
And lots of energy, and
Well, when you're eating food that doesn't have pesticides on it and herbicides on it,
right,
it probably is going to make you healthier and live longer.
right, and you're in an environment that's producing oxygen, right? So there's that too. You're surrounded by plants.
And dirt, dirt apparently like not smelling dirt, like going and like inhaling it, but
being in nature.
Being in it, apparently there's like anti-depression benefits of like working in the soil.
I bet just putting your hands in the soil, and digging things up and putting them back in the ground. I bet
It's
there's
intriguing.
something very therapeutic and cathartic about
Definitely.
it. You know what I'm
Give
saying?
it a try.
Yeah, well, I have some plants here that I grow. I mean, as you guys can see, I have my beautiful begonia here. I got my snake,
It's time to
plant.
make it edible.
Right. That is the next step, is to make a little bit of a garden. As I live in an apartment, so it's a little bit more challenging,
Container garden.
But I know you've been telling me about that.
My friend, I got her, she doesn't, like a lot of vegetables, but we found her niche, and her niche is growing a bunch of fruit on her balcony.
Okay. What kind of fruit?
She has this beautiful key lime that
Really?
constantly surprises me.
Huh.
Strawberries. She's growing a mango from seed.
How big is your balcony?
It's like literally the same size
same
as
as
yours.
mine?
Yeah.
Huh.
And the
So
thing
mine
is
like what, 10 by 6?
it might be a little smaller than that, low
Really?
key. Yeah, and she's also growing dragon fruit now. So it's all
Really?
about things that grow in
Interesting.
containers,
Got it.
like finding, like citrus typically does well in containers.
Right. Yeah, I do.
Blackberries do well in containers. Dragon fruit can grow in a container. Very easy. That's probably one of the easiest you can grow in a container.
Right. How much sunlight does she have?
Full sun.
She has full sun.
So
See, I get like partial sun.
you can still work with that.
Yeah.
As long as it's like not no sun.
Yeah, no, I definitely get sun, but it's like, just
Like you can still do your
half a day.
kale, Swiss chard, leaf lettuces really well.
okay.
Maybe a salad garden.
Salad garden. Okay, yeah. Tomatoes, no?
They like full sun.
They do like full sun. Got it.
You can try it though. That's the whole thing with growing food is you got to try it and see what works for you.
Right.
Like you can, being a farmer in Central Florida, you can stick to the guides that are like these are the right varieties, and obviously it's very important not to get the wrong variety. But I've had some of the best surprises in the garden by like trying out new varieties that aren't, exactly in the book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm growing some of the best kale that I've ever grown right now. It's not one of those varieties that you'll like see in these Central Florida growing guides, It's just one that I saw, it's heat tolerant, great. Like, let's give it a shot.
Got it. So actually that segues perfectly to my next question, which is like, how do you guys actually get the seeds and things like that? Because I know there's big worries about like Monsanto and vegetables and fruits that like aren't nutritious. How do you is there a way to know for sure how or what
Definitely
things are coming from, and
yeah,
and if you can get it from a source, which sources are better than others? I
yeah.
guess.
So for like all around the country, I say Johnny's is a really trustworthy seed company in terms of like, not selling you seeds that just like don't grow.
Okay, like Johnny's.com or something, or
Johnny's Selected Seeds,
Johnny's
and
Selected
I
Seeds,
think it's
okay.
employee owned, so that's like good. I don't know too much about it, so I won't speak on it. But My favorite is Southern Exposure Seed Exchange.
Okay.
And
That's a
that,
mouthful.
yes,
Say it again.
but it's going to be the best for Southern growers at least. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. And they have such cute packets. And the great part about, going on and buying seeds from there is that these are like climate, might need to edit this.
No worries whatsoever. You can just,
I'm gonna mention it whenever
yeah. Whenever it comes to you, you can just say it however it comes.
But
But yeah, it's just fluid. Just if you remember it, great.
yeah, no, I do. I just get tongue twisted,
tongue tied, and tongue twisted.
both of them. But yeah, Southern Exposure. They have seeds that they've been cultivated in the southern United States.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, we're as south as it gets. So
Gotcha.
I like to stick by their varieties and give it a try.
Yeah. So you guys try to get.
And
seeds
they're
from
all
them?
organic.
Oh, nice.
And on
Okay.
Johnny's, you can select if it's organic or not.
Okay.
And organic is definitely a topic of debate because
Everything says
non-GMO organic at the grocery store doesn't mean that it wasn't treated with pesticides. It doesn't mean that they didn't use herbicides. And I could be wrong about that. Don't check me, please. But how you grow it, when people are asking at the fleet farming table at market, they're like, is it organic?
Mm-hmm.
I say, well, actually, it's beyond organic because we focus on regenerating our soil. We focus
Right.
on not using anything synthetic, whether it's pesticide, herbicide, which I don't even use any herbicide, or fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
So also organic standards, they involve a lot of plastic waste as well. Like you use something and it can't be used again.
Gotcha.
To stay with those organic standards,
Mm-hmm.
you can't reuse plastic items. So there's a
Wow.
lot of waste that goes into organics.
Which is incredibly ironic, right?
But
You
it is
think
definitely the better choice at the grocery
it's
store.
still better.
Yeah.
It's just on a sliding scale.
And it's
basically.
still, yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Yeah.
And some things you don't even have to buy organic. Like the Dirty Dozen list exists for a reason.
Right. Right. Which you've shared with me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see if it's on the Dirty Dozen, you should always buy it organically. If it's not, you don't necessarily have to buy it organic.
So the Dirty Dozen, so for those that don't know, explain the Dirty Dozen a little bit.
So the Dirty Dozen is a list that comes out every year, and it pretty much analyzes all of our crops in, I think, this country specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's worldwide. I'm not too sure, but the list is updated yearly, and it's things switch around. I remember strawberries was number one 2 years ago. Now it's kale.
And the Dirty Dozen meaning that dirty is that they use fertilizers?
There's a lot of synthetic chemicals in the process of growing it if it's not organic. So corn is always one that you should try to get organic if you're gonna eat it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a byproduct in a lot of things with
Right.
high fructose corn syrup and
Yes.
whatnot. But if you're getting corn, you should always go for organic because corn is one of those crops that loves pests.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't love it, but the
It
pests
attracts.
love corn.
Got it. So they put a lot of synthetic stuff in there.
Yeah, and corn is especially hard to grow in Florida because of all the pests that we have. So it's usually grown in the Midwest or
Right.
the North. But I figured out growing dill next to corn, you don't even have to apply any pesticides or anything.
Really? How so?
So companion planting, dill is one of the best companion plants you can have in your garden. It attracts those predatory insects I mentioned earlier. So your green lacewings, your ladybugs. It's also a host plant for native butterflies. More specifically, a predatory insect is the parasitic wasp. And that one is really good for like eating caterpillars that are on your crops.
Wow. Companion crop. I don't think I've ever even heard of that.
Companion planting?
Yeah, companion planting.
There's like companion planting and bad neighbors. So like broccoli and tomato, you shouldn't grow those near each other because they have like the similar pests that are attracted to those crops. Garlic is another like universal companion plant. The smell of it detracts pests from your crops. So like growing garlic next to kale, that's something I'm doing right now. It'll help kind of like naturally make those bugs go away.
Right. And so those are insects, and then there's snakes and cats.
And that's like more on a macro level. So like your rodents, snakes and cats.
Snakes and cats.
Owls.
Love that stuff.
More so snakes and owls because they're native.
Right.
Cats can be a little bit of a nuisance in terms of like birds. Like they might be good for getting rid of rodents, but
they also take out the birds.
And those are native and contribute to biodiversity. So owls, you can get an owl box if you have a rodent problem. Snakes, plant enough foliage for them to hide in, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me about a little bit about nonprofits, because I was curious. Are most farmers starting nonprofits? Is that how they're selling crops and stuff, or how do these big, agricultural fields and farms, how do they do it? Is it a full-on profit machine?
That's a great question. From my knowledge, it's usually the government subsidizing agriculture, especially the dairy industry, especially the meat industry, which is why it's cheaper. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Especially when you get into like comparing vegan products and like actual meat. They're like, oh, the vegan products are just so much more expensive. Well, if the government wasn't subsidizing those, it would be literally
way more
so expensive.
Probably,
think about where we came from as people. People were not eating meat every single day.
Right.
And in terms of like, conventional crops and whatnot, I'm sure there has to do with like there are subsidies that have to do with like their operations. And I'm not as knowledgeable in that. Like my knowledge more comes from like urban farming, so like farming in the city and
So you're a city farm boy.
I'm a city farm boy. But that doesn't, like, I know about how growing plants work, but like common farms, conventional farms are usually growing one crop for like thousands of acres, hundreds of acres.
Yes, and this is where these monocultures, this is where Monsanto comes in, this is where highly synthetic fertilizers are being used for a lot of these monocultures. This is how bees are dying and getting
why we have so much algae pollution is because farm fertilizer runoff. Lake Okeechobee is so toxic because of the sugar industry in South Florida, and why we have red tide on both sides of the coast, the sugar industry and agricultural runoff. It also might have to do with the cattle industry, but probably not as much. Like their poop,
I've read, it looks like sugar is the main culprit.
Yeah, in Florida.
In Florida, at least, yeah.
Well, I mean, but then you have to go back to lawns and think about all the fertilizer that we put into our lawn, all the pesticides, all the herbicides.
And all that runs into our water system.
Our waterways, yep. And so another reason to grow food, not lawns.
Right, and if you think about it, if you attack it from a local level, if everybody is doing a little bit of farming at a time, then
it would free up so much agricultural land.
Right.
And we can just, in my like perspective, we should grow food in the cities and in our backyard and more communally, so that the conventional agriculture, we can, rewild those spaces into like precious habitat that our
Yes.
earth needs right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is something that I have thought about, and I know we've discussed this a little bit at length. So I am of the belief that in the future we are probably going to need these very, like, I'm going to call them sacred spaces, and
We need those presently.
we need those present.
It's not a future thing anymore.
Right.
It's like we need this
It's
now.
like if we want it then, we got to do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because we are surrounded by, technology, and we're on our phone all the time. Now we got the Vision Pro. Everybody's going to be just hooked up to the
No, thank
metaverse and
you.
everything. You know what I'm saying? And these cities are just going to become ever more technologically based, and so, like, almost like a little, every city's going to be like a little matrix, where everybody's just going to get lost in the city with all of the stuff that's going on, with the concrete jungle, with the buildings, and there's no grass, and there's no flowers, and there's no, and there is going to be a need, in my opinion, to be able to, like, go out into nature and, take, get out of the matrix for a moment, and then just be at peace with nature, really try to be one with your surroundings, with plants, with animals. I think that that's going to be something that it will become sacred, because
Hopefully.
it'll allow for us to reconnect ourselves with nature, instead of technology becoming our nature. You see what I'm saying? You see where I'm going with that?
Yes, and then I want to kind of contrast a bit, where like ideally I hope we go as a human race, because if not, like we probably won't even make it to that point.
Okay.
But I think the cities can be a wild place themselves. It's a very big idea that we have in the nonprofit I work for. So like we can live harmoniously with nature. It's
Right.
completely possible.
We've been doing it for thousands of years, right? Like,
I wouldn't say the past 100 years.
in the past 100 years, but previous, we lived, in
But
nature.
in the context of, we're at a rate, we're developing these rural spaces into like concrete jungles, as you say. We need to make sure that these houses, these new developments, they have pollinator plants, native pollinators that are growing. Why not have a wildflower meadow in front of your house instead of a lawn? Something like that, growing food. So like at my house, the homeowners association doesn't allow us to grow food in our front yard, so
Oh my God.
I have to stick to the backyard, which I'll plant a few things that they wouldn't recognize to be food and trick them a little bit. But mostly my front yard, we've taken away a lot of as much lawn as we can, and it's all really like native wildflowers. So that's kind of like
That's one way to do it,
I see, you can separate the city and nature and be like, oh, okay, we're gonna go out into nature and find nature to reconnect with it. But nature is like in your own very backyard.
Right.
So
Right.
like it's important to not separate like urban and nature too much, because there is a way that urban environments can be really beneficial for wildlife.
Right.
That's
a
why
great
I was
point.
so big on green roofing, because what we're destroying and putting these buildings up, the roofs could be converted into habitat that, was similar to what was there before.
Right.
Not quite, but that's kind of why green roofing kind of started my like journey into this field.
Why did they even like not want to do that? That doesn't seem
So
like
they
a
had,
problem.
yeah, it's the maintenance or
The
whatever.
maintenance.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like, you have to convert a roof into a green roof in a very like specific way,
Mm-hmm.
which involves like different layers of like, adding these multiple layers of filtration and plastic and just whatnot. And then you get to the soil and the greenery on top. But I guess they were just like, that's a great question. You should ask them.
Yeah.
Honestly, because
It's not
they
like
they
UCF doesn't have the money.
they took away the green roofs that they had. And I
Wow.
don't think it was a structural problem or something like that. It was just a maintenance problem. And you can take away these things and people not even realize because they're in places that aren't as visible,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But something interesting about New York is I think a few years ago they passed their own Green New Deal. And part of it was every new building has to have either wind energy on top, solar energy, or a green roof. And so I had a friend go to New York and they were on like the Empire State or something. I don't know. I'm not from there.
Some large building.
Yeah, and like they like zoomed in and you could see a few roofs that had green roofing on it. So I think that's a really beautiful example of, it's such an urban densely populated area, but you go to the roof and there's like greenery for people to enjoy. A good example is the Javits Center, probably the best example, because they have a green roof, but they're farming their green roof, and it's like
The
a
Javits
couple
Center is
acres.
where?
That's in New York.
In New
It's
York?
like a convention center,
Okay.
and there's like a whole beautiful urban farm on top, and that's one example. Another example is like this green roof that's just like grasses, and a bunch of like rare birds nest there now because it's not just concrete.
Right.
And then there's like a lot of different examples in New York of green roofs, but another aspect is people think in urban environments like that, oh, the ground, it's too polluted for us to like grow food in. Actually, a lot of the time, and a lot of the time, this soil that is in urban areas like New York is not nearly as contaminated as conventional farms in the rural areas. So,
Yeah, another good example is St. Patrick's Cathedral in France.
I haven't heard of. Is that the Green Wall?
No, they beekeep. They have an apiary at the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the St. Patrick's burnt down or partially burnt down?
You're thinking of the Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame. Yeah.
No,
they have an apiary up
and
there.
you want to hear what's crazy? While the Notre Dame was burning, the apiary was like in the path of the fire, but for some reason, it was like didn't get harmed at all by the fire. None of those bees were harmed.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't know that. What do you think happened? You think they stopped? Oh, you think it was on purpose?
Maybe no. I'm thinking a higher power.
Higher power, right? Like, well, that's what I was thinking.
That's what I was just like alluding to. Like,
Yeah.
I'm agnostic myself, but sometimes coincidences aren't coincidences.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. That there's sometimes some things that
Most
are
of the time,
unexplained.
coincidences aren't coincidences.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, I am a big believer in, well, as far as the unexplained things that I can't explain, I think that nature is one of those things that I'm like, where did this all come from?
Well, it's crazy because like Earth is so fragile, but it's also like self-regulating, and it does this like self-regulation in small patches like all over the world,
Yes.
but at the same time, it's like a big system in itself.
It's a giant ecosystem.
And it's crazy. Like, I agree.
This
I'm like,
micro
where did
ecosystem.
it come from?
Where did it come from?
Evolution.
Evolution. Yeah.
I'm a very big believer in evolution.
I'm a big believer in
I don't
evolution
even
too.
think there is anything to, like,
Yeah, there's nothing to parse there. It's,
literally.
Yeah, it's evolution. If you give things enough time, they will evolve.
Yes.
You know? So, yeah, exactly. So, So, speaking of a larger ecosystem, do you see a path forward where you think that our global woes will go away, or do you think that, as far as things evolve, you think that the planet can kind of heal itself as we go forward, or do you think that that's going to take a lot of
The planet could heal itself if people weren't around. I definitely think that. But like, this is like our two options that I see. We're gonna like go down in flames, and people are gonna be like, how did this all happen? Like, don't look up. You know that movie?
Yeah.
Just like that.
Yeah.
That's a whole allegory or metaphor, like whatever you want to call it. It's representative of climate change. And so we have that path where it's like, okay, we're gonna destroy ourselves, or we're gonna like get by, but we're just gonna get by like by the
sliver.
Yeah. Like, and it's like
by luck almost.
Yeah, well, not luck. It's the hard work of people like myself, you know? And, I used to have such eco anxiety, but I like have to think about what I'm doing and not to be like, oh, me, but like, there's so many like qualified, hardworking, passionate individuals that are working really hard in like different elements of like the climate change problem. And like, I want to believe, in those people and what they're doing. And a lot of the time, it's shown that when Earth is hurting and we've polluted a certain area really bad, and we go in there, we clean it up, and we get it back on track, those like places have shown to like bounce back really quickly,
right?
Because Earth wants to like regulate itself,
right? So, it wants to get back into balance.
So to answer your question, I don't know. It's like right now we're not on a good path,
right,
towards
Well, if you think about it, like, we have farmers that are passionate about farming, but here comes the government and subsidizes their crops and tells them what to do with their crops. And you know what I'm saying? Like,
and
a lot of these, unfortunately, a lot of these industries in the agricultural industry are captured,
And like, I found that a lot of conventional agriculture and those farmers themselves, first of all, the average age of an American farmer is 58 years old. And so these people, they were not approaching agriculture from like a scientific aspect. They're approaching it from I'm gonna cultivate my land, and this is how you operate the machines, and this is like whatnot. But like the attention to soil quality and like making sure our soil stays fertile, which is a really big problem and like goes hand in hand with climate change. They're not, and I know it's like changing, like everything I'm saying is constantly changing, There are people who are waking up and feeling activated towards, okay, what can I do personally?
Right.
Whether it's not eating red meat anymore, whether it's growing food in your backyard, whether it's planting some native pollinators, planting a tree where grass was, having an apiary, and or using kelp meal on your farm, using activated biochar in your, which that's another topic, but using that in conventional farms to make them, more
rich and also regenerative
and like carbon capturing.
Yeah, I think there's a really awesome, I just heard about this. There was a regenerative farm called Southern Hill Farms in Georgia.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, and I mean, it's awesome to think that you can take what was once an agricultural field where you're putting tons of pesticides, where there's tons of runoff, where there's, just basically the environment is, although it's organized in that there's crop fields, it's chaotic in that there's no real sense of management when it comes to making sure that that can regenerate more and more crops, and that the animals are all kind of like using it and living.
It's all
amongst
like
each other's-
circular.
Right.
Like making sure your inputs don't exceed the outputs and vice versa.
Right, and that you can take these farms and then make them regenerative in the sense
Because
that
you don't have to use a lot of fertilizer if you're taking care of your soil.
I was about to say, if you do what you just said, companion farming, if you do the same things where you're if you are growing, say cattle or other types of animals, but it's
not growing cattle.
or some people grow cattle, some people grow cows, and I think that there are ways that you can have farms that are regenerative regardless of what you're growing on there, where you're using everything.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it creates this small ecosystem that allows for everything to live harmoniously with its companion plant or animal, and then you don't have to sacrifice on quality. You have a small group of people that know exactly how to do it. There's no runoff or barely any runoff. I think that could be the future of farming if people really
totally
thought about it from a scientific perspective, really put a lot of thought and like
it's all about the science.
Yeah, how to put it together in a way that it just keeps the fruit that keeps on giving.
Yeah. Well, yes.
Yeah.
And like another example of like, okay, we're gonna start urban farming. Society's gonna really love urban farming so much that we don't need to use those agricultural rural areas for growing food anymore, which that's like way down the line, if at all. But a really good example of like rewilding agriculture, especially like toxic agriculture, in our own backyard, the Apopka Wildlife Drive.
I've done it.
You have?
I have.
So it was a really, really toxic, like polluting Lake Apopka really bad, kind of similar to Lake Okeechobee.
Yeah.
And there was like a land trust or some people who were really passionate about like seeing the problem and like what was happening, and they turned it all back into wetland, and there's just like so much biodiverse richness,
Right.
So many gators, so many herons, so many birds, like literally bears, you name it. It's probably
and cars.
There. Well, yeah, but it's so cool. You can literally drive right past a huge alligator
by wetlands and see all of the biodiversity. It's beautiful. I've been there. It's awesome to see the flocks of birds, like giant flocks of birds, just go across the wetland. I mean, it's just like there's nothing like it. I mean,
I think they're doing something like that in, I want to say Argentina. I think it's Argentina, and it has to do with like the jaguar population.
Interesting.
Maybe Iberia as well, like in Europe. I think they've done something like that. But yeah, I'm a farmer, but my passion really lies in habitat restoration. So like when I started this job, I was like, oh, well, growing food isn't necessarily habitat restoration, but in a way it is. You have to have your pollinators to grow food,
Right.
Because your food needs pollinated. You need to cultivate the soil and make it rich, which is restoring soil content, and it's a whole ecosystem under there. And then you get to the insects that live in the farms, like your ladybugs, everything that's small has a ripple effect upward. And Yeah, I think, knowing what I know now, I would say urban agriculture is habitat restoration.
It is, and I think that it's
Yes, 1 hour 20 minutes. Can we
Wrap
let
it
the
up.
camera a little bit like?
we can give it 10 minutes
Yeah,
because I
okay.
think we were about to wrap up. Actually, I was
Yeah.
literally about to finish up, so we can give it 10 minutes. Come back and we'll do
Yeah.
10, 15 minutes, and we'll wrap it up. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Wait, we're taking a break?
Humans, and it's been through the process of consuming animal products. So,
I don't agree.
it's 100% true.
No,
Our
it's not.
brain
You know how
capacity
often
grew.
people ate meat as we were evolving? Like once every 2 weeks, that's probably common. That's probably like way more.
So if you look,
Most people were eating plant-based. Nobody ate meat every day back evolving, which is what we do currently. And it's at an unsustainable rate.
we have, so let's start with Neanderthals, right? Homo erectus and Neanderthals were chasing wild game in the savannas to consume meat. Why do you think they were doing that?
What?
Homo erectus and Neanderthals and all of the other Homo species were,
Yeah.
all of us, were chasing wild game in order to consume protein. Why do you think that was happening? Because it was nutrient dense, because it produced tons of calories, tons of good fats, and sustained entire groups and clans of people. As time went on, we evolved into humans that did the exact same thing. We chased animals like
We
Native
don't chase
Americans.
animals these days.
That's my point, but this is where I was going. Native Americans hunted, and they had a whole system of taking care of the environment by consuming what they needed, right? And yes, you're right. Native Americans didn't eat meat every day, but they did consume meat. They chased buffalo, they chased bears, they chased dogs, they chased everything, and they ate all of these things out here in the wild, right? And I get it. These people had a system of keeping that regeneration going. When populations were dwindling, they would not hunt to extinction buffalo, for example. And although they did almost kill the buffalo, but
It wasn't them. It was the colonials.
it was the colonials. Okay, so my point is that I think that what needs to happen is just like a re-education of what it means to consume meat and how to produce it in a sustainable manner. Like, for example, Southern Hill Farms, they produce cattle. They have a regenerative farm. They don't even make hundreds of millions of dollars. They make $30 million, $40 million as a small farm. And they have cattle, they have vegetables, they have barely any runoff. And they're doing, and their farm is not just carbon neutral, but carbon negative. And it's all while still producing.
Oh, I'm well aware that raising cattle, there is a way to sequester
Animal
more
husbandry
carbon.
is
But
a
the
thing.
thing is you're delusional if you're gonna sit here and act like the meat that you're eating and consuming comes from that kind of system at all.
Well,
Just
it can.
saying.
What I'm saying is that it can, and I think that that's part of the re-education that I'm talking about. I think
But that's
that
not happening. There is no
I-
magical switch that you can flip.
I think that everything unfortunately unfolds in progression. As time goes on, we slowly start to turn a large ship. It's going to be, I think it's a little bit delusional to think that everybody's just going to go vegan and
No.
then climate change is going to all of a
That's
sudden
not,
disappear.
it's not realistic, but the urgency at which climate change requires us to react, to act right now
Yeah.
means that we all should be going plant-based.
I think
And that's not realistic, I get it, but
Incorporate more
but-
vegetables into your diet.
but red
Yeah,
meat,
I agree.
something you can do, not eating red meat.
Or cutting like a day out.
If you have to eat animals, stick to your white meats, stick to your fish. You know, things that have a less environmental impact than red meat.
What do you think about hunting your own red meat?
Oh, I'm so for it because deer, because we've removed a lot of our wild predators, bears, wolves, cougars, panthers,
Yeah.
we have an overpopulation of deer that are throwing a bunch of natural ecosystems out of balance
Right.
because they're overgrazing, they're like, as deer do.
Yes.
So personally, I think hunting is very much environmentally friendly.
And yet you could not at the same time have the entire population go hunting for white meat out there, chicken, turkey,
Well,
rabbit.
if it's like out there, it doesn't matter if it's white meat or not because red meat, the way that it's being raised
Or red
and
meat.
produced,
Yeah.
is not sustainable.
I guess my point is that there is no one thing that people can do that will turn the switch of climate change off. I think that there needs to be a re-education of how to consume meat and what types of meat to consume and incorporating more vegetables. I mean, all-cause mortality is increasing because we're eating all of these carbs and sugars and things like that. And I think that that's where a lot of education and diet has to come in, because I don't think that people are really understanding what a balanced diet is. You know, I don't consume
you know what
red meat every
you know
day.
what they call the standard American diet? Sad.
Tell me,
No, I'm saying
it's sad.
they call the standard they SAD.
Is an acronym.
SAD, yeah, it's an acronym, and it's
For-
called SAD for a reason. The standard American diet is very sad.
Right.
So-
And our products that we make here are completely for profit. So we're using the crappiest ingredients for things. And, you know, I think I read something on Instagram that said that this guy went to Europe and he's like, guys, people eat way better in Europe. The ingredients here are way higher quality than they are in America. And they're basically eating the same, more or less the same foods, but the ingredients, you know, that too, the quality of the ingredients that you're eating matter also. So again, I
Well,
think
Europe has a lot of more rules and regulations towards agriculture,
right, yeah. Well, they've been doing it for thousands of years.
but they don't have the space to. Just kidding. I don't know.
Well,
I don't think they
I
have the
guess-
space to produce for all of their
Yeah, I think
urban population.
I think I read something about like, I don't know, a big percentage of our meat actually is not even grown here. It actually gets imported here from India and Australia.
Well, actually, that might be true. But fast food, red meat, Taco Bell, rainforest,
Yeah.
through supporting that. And that's where I'm kind of coming from things is as the consumer, if you're very passionate about eating meat that is sustainable, go to your local market and buy
Right.
meat.
Right. That's such a good point, actually.
But
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Make
if
sure
you're-
that it's
if
from
you-
a farm that's local, that is trying to keep their farm
Because
going
there
and
are
regenerative. and-
yes, and the ways of sustainable cattle ranching is by not letting cows open graze, like not letting them just roam everywhere. The whole thing is sectioning your farm into separate bits that
Right.
okay, these cows are gonna graze this area, and in the process, their urine and their feces are enriching the soil. Okay, they're done with that patch. We're going to close that previous patch off. They're going to move to the next one. And the time that it takes for them to go all around this farm to get back to that one space that they originally started on, that space is going to be nicely grown,
Right.
overgrown, and the cows are going to eat it, of course. But they're regenerating the soil by not letting these cows just like mow the whole thing down all at once.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I think that. So I think that there's. I think that there's a lot of value in what you're saying. I appreciate your insights. I also appreciate where you're coming from with being vegan. My producer is vegetarian, and he talks to me about it all the time. So I do see where you're coming from with that. I also do think, though, that there is space for this education of how to consume foods and really recognize that animals are not a given, that they are not just here for us to consume. And when you look at things like that, then you hopefully start to, if you look at it from a different perspective and you start to really appreciate it, I think that that's when really the American diet could potentially change. Telling everybody to go vegan, I think is a good thought, and it is empathetic to humans and animals. However, I think that the culture, the meat-eating culture that exists is one that is probably, I don't think it's going to go away. I don't see it. I don't see the path forward for that, which is why I think that a re-education...
It's so funny because there's a lot of research that says that we are moving away from a meat-heavy diet.
Well,
and
moving
by
away from
like
a meat-heavy
2050
diet,
or something,
yeah,
you're going to have a lot more meat alternatives that are way more popular and affordable.
And I hope that they do keep coming out and people continue to explore different ways of changing their diet. Maybe we can do kind of like a viral thing where we don't consume meat for a month or something, Let's like all
What's
stop.
viral about that?
Viral in the sense that the culture right now is
like having
diet.
Everyone collectively
as a culture.
I just wish Earth Month could be like that.
No meat November or something, And
I love that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I create.
Oh my god! And well, actually, oh my god! As a vegan, I have to. I don't know why I left this out. Veganuary. That's
Veganuary.
Literally already
Okay, so-
exists. January is supposed
Okay.
to be
No meat consumption.
no meat consumption.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
and if we all collectively did that, we would completely eliminate entire emissions of like multiple companies put together, H&M, Target, like the maybe Amazon, although that's a lot of emissions
big
right there. But it's shown like there's a lot of research that says, okay, if all Americans participated in Veganuary, we would significantly alter the amount of carbon being emitted into our atmosphere.
I think that is worthwhile. I think that is something that a lot of people should give a lot of thought to. And imagine if you also simultaneously year round or as much as you could also had vegetables in your garden, in your backyard. It would make it that much easier to do what is it?
Veganuary.
Veganuary. And
I want to hear how you said that.
I don't even know how I said that. So hey, this has been an incredible, awesome conversation. It's such a pleasure to always talk to you about this stuff.
Did I even say my name?
I don't know, but you can say it now.
Hey
This is
guys,
Dawson.
I'm Dawson Amico. I'm the fleet farming manager and I'm vegan. I'm age 24. I'm a UCF student. And
This is on your LinkedIn profile.
well, yes.
So follow Dawson. I think this has been a great conversation. Tell me, where else can we find you, or what you're working on right now?
If you want to volunteer on the farms, the fleet farmlets, what we call them, We do volunteering the first and third Saturday of the month at Audubon edit that. At Audubon Park Covenant Church, 3219 Chelsea Street, Orlando, Florida. We're there 9 a.m.
Nice.
We provide the bikes for volunteers, and yeah, come on out if you want to learn how to grow food.
All right, check it out. That was First Talk. First Talk podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Course.
That was so awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, ready for some Indian food?
Yes, please.
All right, let's do it.
I got heated at the end there. I'm not gonna lie.
You what?
You got me heated at the end there.
I got you heated. You got me.